This is the fourth in what I hope will be a handful of videos covering the experiences that spurred me to question my religion and later to identify as an atheist. I'm hoping that reviewing my experiences will help to refine my thinking and create a record that I can look at later. I also want to create this video for family and friends who find out that I'm an atheist. In-person conversations have frequently been frustrating. So I'm going to try using a video recording as a way to communicate the major experiences that led to my non-belief. If I've linked you to this series, I hope that this will provide some context for the thought processes and experiences that led me to identify as an atheist. Okay, let's jump into it. After I left Christianity, I identified as spiritual but not religious. I had a vague sense that I found living beautiful, and I interpreted this as a connection to the divine. This didn't have much resemblance to mainline Christianity, but it offered at least a little bit of what I thought of as hope. It seemed fine to nurture a little bit of faith, and giving it up was terrifying since I'd already given up so much of my belief system. I found that I was ignorant of most non-Christian religions, and I decided that I wanted to broaden my horizons because I felt it was unacceptable to be so ignorant of non-Christian religious beliefs and practices. I wanted to learn more about the variety of religious perspectives and practices in the world. I never seriously considered converting to a non-Christian religion, but I was very interested in their perspectives and ideologies and the myths and stories that they told. I was very aware of the perils of religion, but I thought I might glean positive practices by learning more about other faiths. I wanted to more broadly and deeply sample religious ideas and concepts. And since I'm a nerd, I explored comparative religious practices by reading academic and religious texts on any and all religions that popped into my mind or my framework. I read religious texts on Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism, as well as less formally organized religious perspectives like animism, pantheism, and ancestor worship. I still actually find religion interesting in a sociological sense, and kept some of my books on religion and philosophy, books on Buddhism, Hinduism, and Shintoism. However, just like Christianity, I largely rejected the underlying doctrines and premises of each religion. I didn't believe in the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path in Buddhism, nor did I believe in the Hindu doctrine of karma or the reincarnation cycle. I'd occasionally try a religious practice, such as various forms of meditation. However, I thought that separated from the culture and specific context, the religious practices lost much of their purpose and significance. And I, in a lot of ways, just disliked New Age practices of plucking whatever from whatever religious tradition because of the tendency to divorce the religious practice from its underlying culture, context, and belief system. As an aside, I do have a little Hindu Ganesh figure because I'm a little tickled by the fact that he's a patron of the arts and sciences. But that's just for fun. Despite largely rejecting the non-Christian belief systems that I researched, my studies into non-Christian religious practices and perspectives did serve an important function to erase most, if not all, of the residual predilections to Christian religious practices like prayer or Bible study or things like that. During this time period, I attended a Unitarian church that catered to my lingering spiritual but not religious belief system in the divine, since I still wanted a sense of community and social support. I didn't go to the actual services. The similarities to the religious Sunday service at my old church made me very uncomfortable. But I'd stop by for the parties and the camping trips and the service activities. I still count most of the people I met as friends too, even if my perspective has shifted. My beliefs during this time were definitely not conventional, but I think it was important for me to recuperate and to become comfortable with a new religious perspective and identity. Taking this time, even if it was ultimately only an intermediary step, was important to my mental health. However, inevitably, I had an experience that caused me to reevaluate my belief in the divine. One day, I got into a fairly heated argument. I noticed a little display on the sidewalk across from the college campus, close to the medical school. I had some free time between classes, and I've tended to be pretty curious about many of the promotional stands on and near the campus. As I drew closer, I saw that it was basically an advertisement for homeopathy. Now, I do want to state that I am not a doctor, but I know enough about general biology, and I have enough of a background in the scientific method and study practices to know that homeopathy is quack pseudoscience. No reputable science or medical study supports it, and that day I was probably just feeling a little touchy because I didn't simply shrug it off and walk away. I admit I intentionally invited a probably useless argument with a complete stranger on the street. And sometimes I guess I am a little bit of a mischief maker. I told the person at the booth that homeopathy was pseudoscience, that no reputable medical studies supported its use. And they responded that they had tried homeopathy and that it had worked for them. Further, they said, what was the harm from using homeopathy? It didn't hurt anyone, at least, to try homeopathy. I responded that it could be harmful because people would use homeopathy rather than seek medical treatment for medical emergencies. This back and forth went on for a few minutes before I just gave up in frustration. But as I left, the argument just sort of lingered in my mind a little bit. The rationale supporting homeopathy, that it was just personal experience, and what was the harm, bounced around as I went on to my next class and after I completed that class. And I realized that it mirrored the justifications that I was using to maintain my own faith in the divine, even down to the justification from personal experience and the idea that my belief didn't harm anyone. And yet, here, the same reasoning that I used to support my identification as spiritual but not religious and my faith in the divine or a higher power, or however I was calling it on that particular day, was used to support a claim for homeopathy that I found destructive for the individual and for society. And when I saw the similarities between my faith and homeopathy, I realized that my belief in the divine remained untested and unexamined, and that I had intentionally avoided testing whether my beliefs were true because I wanted my beliefs to be true. I wanted for the universe to have some sort of divinity, even if it wasn't conscious, or God, or Yahweh, or any of the organized religions that I had looked at. Even if my beliefs were false, I assumed that my faith was comforting and harmless. And I could not honestly call my faith factually true, because I had maintained since I had maintained a faith in the divine that was as formless and benign as possible. I had specifically made it unfalsifiable, a god of the gaps, and trying to disprove it would be like trying to nail Jello to the wall. And when I looked at how my faith functioned, I found a huge hole in my epistemology. My faith suddenly seemed like a trap, a blind spot that I had allowed to exist, and even had gardened and tried to let it prosper in my mind. And since faith has such a positive connotation in our society, I'm going to tell a little story that might help enlighten you. Once upon a time, there was a woman named Pandora, and the gods gave her a box as a gift. But of course, Pandora was never, ever, ever to open that box. like any human, Pandora was curious about what the box contained. So one day, she snuck into her room and she opened the box and outrushed all of the evils of the world: plagues, famine, violence, and natural disasters. But the gods had one final evil that Pandora initially trapped in the box, but that eventually fled. And this last, the most destructive and the most terrible evil to escape Pandora's box, was false hope. And of course, what is there to distinguish faith and hope? After all, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is comforting and easy. I wanted to see the world clearly, though, even if it's terrifying, even if the universe doesn't care at all about my existence or humanity's existence or any individual life on Earth. I wanted to see that clearly. And I didn't want to waste my energies and thoughts on a false hope. And so I let go of my lingering belief system. And what I found is that what's left is enough. I can enjoy my personal experiences and discoveries and the beauty of the natural world without attributing that enjoyment and that experience to some sort of divinity. I don't need a higher power to find the flower nice or the universe grand or humanity contradictory, but on the whole good. And I like living and experiencing new things and helping out others who live near me in my community. So that's what I try to do, because that's what makes me happy in the present and upon reflection. I hope that this provides a little bit of insight for my friends who struggle to understand why I would reject not simply specific doctrines or specific religions or Christianity, but spirituality and faith more generally. Thanks for your time.